Looks like we're ready. I see that it's live streaming. Are we ready to
Yes.
go?
Yes.
Great, good, very good. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Finance and Claims Committee of the Norwalk Common Council for today, Thursday, August 10th, 2023, beginning at 7:03 p.m. I'd like to move into the agenda, the first with the roll call. Councilmember Nora Nadjelski-Eichner.
Present.
Councilmember Diana Revolus. Councilmember Ed Camacho.
Here.
Councilmember Brian Meek.
Here.
And Councilmember Greg Burnett is present. And we have a quorum for tonight's meeting. Moving on to public participation. We did not receive any emails with any items to be included or shared during the meeting. Do we have anyone in attendance that wishes to address the committee? If you do, if you're in attendance as an attendee, if you can virtually raise your hand and we'll move you to a panelist so you can share any comments you might have. Okay, I do not see any hands being raised, so we will move forward and close public participation and move to item 4, which is approval of the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting dated July 13th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Councilmember Nora Nadjelski-Eichner, thank you. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes related to the minutes from July 13th? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, show by the sign of raising your hand or verbal. Let's see, Councilmember Nora Nadjelski-Eichner, myself. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have Councilmember Brian Meek and Councilmember Ed Camacho. Diane, did you vote either way?
I'm sorry, I was having networking issue. Everything went quiet. I was connecting to internet and I didn't hear anything. I was actually frozen for a minute.
Are you supportive of voting yes for the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so we have
My apologies.
three, thank you, no problem. 3 yays and 2 abstentions, so the minutes are passed. Thank you. So we're moving now in the agenda to items 5, 6, and 7, which item 5 is our Claims Committee report, followed by the narrative on the tax collection dated August 2023, and then our monthly tax collectors report dated July 2023. So over to our tax collector, Lisa B., who's been extremely busy the past few days, few months. Thank you, Lisa, for joining.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening. I am apologizing in advance. We do not have any claims for the month of July because we were at the counter all month. We will catch up with claims now that the collection cycle is over. Normally we have a little bit of time the first week of August to get some together, but we didn't this year because our collection went on until August 7th, which was just this past Monday. Along the same vein, if I can slide into the other 2 items, we don't yet have our July 2023 month closed. We're working on it, but we didn't have it in time for the Board of Estimate or for your meeting tonight. So probably within the next 3 business days, we'll have it. The only thing I am able to give you is a verbal report and also the narrative that I prepared, basically in preparation for questions that I thought you might have. There've been a lot of media reports about the collection and issues that we had with our billing. The administration issued several press releases and has been in like having direct contact with the press about specific issues. But I tried to put as much as I could into the narrative to address what some of those issues were. The Board of Estimate had asked me to do this back at the meeting that they had the first week of July. And then I spoke with them again this week on Monday. So that's what's in the narrative. It's more a narrative on how the collection went. Obviously, there were some issues, but there were also some good things. We did get through the collection. August 7th went off without a hitch, the last day to pay. There were really no lines at all on the 7th. The lines were the end of July. And I addressed that in the narrative that the new format of the bills was well received. But there were some other things that went wrong. We're still digging out. We got caught up with our mailed processing today. Just this afternoon, we got through the mail and we're almost done with all our other posting. So that's kind of remarkable considering Monday was the end of the cycle and it's now Thursday and we're caught up with our mail. But I'm here to try to answer some of your questions that you might have about what you've read. Not all of the information, particularly what's available on social media, not all of it is accurate. So we would try to answer your questions and give you the information that you need so you can share it with your constituents.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have any questions? I guess the one question that I have, now that we're at this point in the collection process, are we confident that all those that might have received a incorrect bill or statement, those individuals have been contacted and they now have the correct statement, and we resolve any outstanding items there?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because that's really the question of the hour, isn't it? And the answer is no, not yet. And what we're doing, and the deputy assessor, the interim assessor, Paul Gorman, is also on the call and he can chime in as well. Not all of the individuals have been contacted yet. Hundreds of them have, because the folks who were able to reach out to Paul's staff when they got their bill and have those adjustments made right away. All of those people, Paul's staff made the correction in their system. Then my division sent the person an adjusted bill and they have 30 days to pay it. The problem now is dealing with everybody else because there are others that have not yet been identified. Paul's office is working on that in conjunction with the vendor, in conjunction with Quality Data Service. They've been working on this with Paul's folks. They are going to do a mailing. We expect that mailing will probably go out from Quality Data around the end of August, and we anticipate giving the taxpayers affected until September 30th to pay. Bearing in mind that some taxpayers got a bill with an assessment that was higher than it should have been, but other taxpayers we have found got a bill with an assessment that was lower than it should have been. So some people are getting a bill that is lower. Some people are getting a bill that is higher. They have to cross-check that against people who've already paid because we don't want to add to the confusion by sending them a bill when they paid a month ago. We have to match it against what they've already paid in cases where they have paid. So it's a little bit convoluted, and I did try to put that in the report, but there's a number of variables that have to be addressed. But the answer to your question is that not everybody has been contacted yet. And our way of handling it was we'd rather that it be done later and correctly than try to rush through it while we were trying to deal with everything else during the collection and have it not be accurate. And Paul, please feel free to correct anything that I misspoke there or chime in.
My chime in would just be Lisa nailed it. She got it exactly right. We've got all our information and our ducks in a row to now start the next process like Lisa just described, which is to be able to take all the new information of all the new pricing that's going to generate the new bills, whether they be higher or lower. But like Lisa said, they have to be compared and contrasted to payments and such so that we make sure that a person doesn't get more bothered than they need to be.
And I would also add too, literally hundreds of those adjustments have already been made by Paul's staff, because the boxes of corrected bills that were going out of my division over the course of the past 4 weeks, I would see an entire box of envelopes going in the mail, and I knew that's what they were. They were corrected bills already being done. So we've already done a lot of it, but their QDS, the vendor, is doing something over the computer that's picking up on any, like the people maybe who didn't call, the people who maybe didn't notice that their bill wasn't right, because it was our commitment to make sure that everybody's bill was accurate, that everybody's assessment was accurate. And then what we will follow up with that is Paul and I both have to refile a number of state reports, because the information that we reported to the state as part of our grand list and grand levy was not accurate. So there's other follow-up that has to happen in addition to the bills going out. And Paul and I are working on that as well.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Brian Meek.
Thank you. Lisa, do you think this is this limited to motor vehicle tax, or could this possibly impact personal property tax or real estate as well?
It's my understanding, thank you for the question, that this is a motor vehicle issue. There were some other issues with real estate. I haven't heard any issues with personal property. The issue that we had with real estate was identified very, very, very early on, because the real estate bills went to the mail first. And the issue with that was there were a number of households that did not receive the proper amount of disabled and elderly taxpayer credit relief. That was identified early on. There were about 300 households that were affected. Paul's office made the changes, and within the week of being notified, we had those adjusted bills in the mail. So that was addressed. But this is an assessment issue that had to do with motor vehicle assessed values in the assessor's office. Paul, I don't know if you want to add in or if you heard anything about personal property. I did not.
No, there were the issues that we're dealing with were with the unpriced motor vehicles that came to us, and the fashion in which they were priced manually did not work in the way that it was intended. It has nothing to do with the real estate, and it has nothing to do with personal property, and it has nothing to do with either of the two systems that that this data was housed in. So it's not a Munis fault, it's not a QDS fault. It was just a methodology that did not work properly and unfortunately created false values, for lack of a better term. But it's not widespread to everything. It's contained within motor vehicle.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I guess a follow-up question would be, do we, having gone through this cycle and identified some of the inaccurate statements and made the necessary adjustments and fixes, are we confident that cycles going forward will be smoother?
I can feel that, yes. The methodology that was utilized that caused this issue this year is not going to be used in the future. We received an inordinate amount of unpriced motor vehicles this year from DMV, which led to the prior assessor pricing it the way that he did. If we receive, two things are going to occur. If we receive that many motor vehicles that are unpriced again this year, the first question is going to be back to DMV. Why is this happening again? The second thing is we are going to handle it the way that it's always been handled in prior years. And we're just going to utilize more of the staff if necessary to price these things manually from the books and from at times internet research, but it will go back to normal for next year and it should not repeat itself.
Great, thank you.
And if I could add to the vast majority of motor vehicle bills that were issued were accurate. We've taken a lot of bad press on this, but most people's bills were actually correct. That doesn't mean that most people were happy with their bill, because as a function of the economy and the value of used motor vehicles having increased since COVID, or at least having not depreciated as much as they used to, a lot of people called to question their bill and were given the response from Paul's division that in fact the assessment is correct. Yes, your vehicle really is worth that. So they weren't happy with the answer, but the value was a true and accurate value. So that added to some of the confusion because these values were higher than people were expecting them to be. But most of those people were getting an accurate bill.
Greg, could I add a point, please? Greg?
Oh, yes, Mr. Dacquist, Chief Financial Officer.
Sorry, I didn't
Yes.
mean to interrupt you. Just to give you a perspective, and Paul and Lisa, correct me if I have the wrong numbers. We have about 75,000 motor vehicles that we tax every year. And going back to Paul's point, on average, in a regular year, 3,000 to 4,000 of them are not valued by the DMV at the state. So we take those unvalued vehicles and in a manually intensive effort, physically, it's like going back 100 years. Look up the values in a book, take the value, input it into a computer system. Hopefully that manual entry is not an error. And that's how we would deal with it every year. This year, we had over 10,000 vehicles that were not valued by the state. And upon inquiry to other jurisdictions, we understand they too had a tripling of the number of unvalued cars. Okay, so we're not the only one, but DMV at the state level had some sort of problem where triple the number of unvalued vehicles occurred. And with limited staff, the prior assessor tried to calculate the assessed value for all these vehicles using automation, computer systems, sorting, so that we could get to the dates that we needed to file. He felt that if we only did it manually for all 10 or 12,000 vehicles, we would be very delayed. But apparently in the method he used, it caused problems. And that's why we've had to go back. We've had to look at almost all the vehicles. Paul had a cutoff that said if the valuation that we ended up with was more than a certain cutoff, then we're re-examining it to check it and to make sure. And yet we're going through a manual process. So that's the problem where we had it today. And it's unfortunate, but going forward, Paul is projecting that we're going to go back to a manual process. In this day and age, there's no reason why a database can't be automated and matched and compared to all these vehicles. And if the DMV can't do it, we should be exploring that also. And we will if we have serious issues in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Diana Revolus and then the Councilmember Nora Jagelski-Eichner.
I just wanted to know if you can clarify what would categorize a car as an unvalued item.
So unvalued means
Yeah, the
that we got the download from the state. The valuation was blank. Not right, not wrong, blank. And every year we go through this and we have to fill it in. But the numbers and percentages were huge. I'll go back to Lisa's point. 65 out of 75,000 cars had valuations and they were accurate. Okay, so let's give it a perception here and understand the scale. But we don't touch the values we get from the state. If somebody complains and the values that the state gave were wrong, then we correct it if it's found to be correct later.
Yeah, I can just clarify too, the way that we tax motor vehicles, we get our information from the state of Connecticut. They give us a list every year. They give the assessor's office a list of all the taxpayers with their vehicles, name, address, type of vehicle, and they assign a value. They're supposed to assign a value to each vehicle. And like Henry said, there were 10,000 or whatever items on that list that had just no value assigned. That was a higher than usual number. There's always some, we call them unpriced vehicles, that don't come with a value assigned from the state, and we have to manually look it up and determine what a fair value should be.
And let me just clarify to be very particular. Valuations we get are from the state's Department of Motor Vehicles. The Office of Policy and Management has nothing to do with the values that we get. I want to make sure that's clear because in the past, there might have been mistaken beliefs.
I appreciate that. So that's basically a line that the DMV is supposed to fill, like a blue book value of the car. I thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oh, Councilmember Nora Jagelski-Eichner.
Yeah, and just to this point that you're making, Henry and Lisa, I'm just wondering if there is any communication that we need to make to the state or any coordination we need to do with our neighboring towns. I mean, is this sort of a one-time deal where DMV, because of some issue, or is there some larger systemic problem that we need to try to help address or encourage the state to address?
We've been busy fixing our own house, haven't spent a lot of time looking at the causes, but talking to our peers in other cities, we know that it was a larger issue this year. And for my money, we have 75,000 vehicles. They have to deal with millions, okay? And if they have a database with make, model, and year, why they can't get all those values in for each and every city? There have been occasions where the same make, model, and year have different values for different cities, okay? So I'm not going to look at Department of Motor Vehicles and try to fix their problems, but understand if they have a systemic problem, it rolls forward to each city. And you can see now all the problems we've had and all the extra time and money we've had to spend to try to fix it.
And if I may just chime in for a second, the Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers has a motor vehicle committee. They are aware of the issue that we had with how many. Henry is correct. Many other towns around us also had higher than usual numbers of unpriced, not nearly to the degree that we had. And it's on my list of things to do once we get through what I consider the important part, which is getting everybody's records correct, to have a meeting with the Assessing Association people to go forth and have them talk to DMV about, hey, why did this happen? And do we anticipate it happening again? Because I'd like to know in advance rather than just having the list dumped in my lap again this year with nearly 12,000 cars that are unpriced. So, but I don't think we need to expand this out to talking to other towns. Everybody needs to take care, as Henry said, everybody needs to take care of their own house.
Oh, Councilmember Ed Camacho.
Isn't it the case that values of cars change from one region of the state to another region of the state, or from state to state? Wouldn't that make it impossible for there to be one uniform?
Well, the values that are utilized in Connecticut, it's I don't have a pricing guide on my desk, but we use what's called the Eastern Region Pricing Guide from JD Power. That's what the state of Connecticut contracts with JD Power to utilize. And the same values are populated throughout the entire state of Connecticut. So if you have a Cadillac Escalade in Stamford or a Cadillac Escalade in Groton, it's valued the same way. It may be taxed differently because of a different mill rate, but the value is the same town to town, city to city.
I think, Ed, you know, in real estate, even within our own city, there are comparables and it's based on regional and geographic differences. But on motor vehicles, we're uniform for Connecticut.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Well, we know you're working hard, Lisa. That goes without saying. So, whatever support we can give you to continue to get through this, and it's not over. You know, corrections to come. So, we'll whatever support we can give you so that we can get this resolved as well as fixed and prepare for future cycles. We're here to help.
Thank you. And I appreciate your patience and the patience of everybody who has dealt with all of this with us, and Paul's staff as well. Thank you.
So on items 5, 6, and 7, there's no claims so there's no specific actions to take. These items are for information only. Moving on to item 8 is the tax assessor's update on the revaluation process. So over to you, Paul Gorman, for an update on our reval process.
All right, thank you much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased to announce that both the residential and commercial first pass visitations to all the properties where Vision was responsible for knocking on every door and attempting to gain access or at least get information at the door. Both residential and commercial have all been visited. The process that I started talking about last month with sending out the data mailers has begun. We've already sent out 12,500 out of 29,000 and change. Another batch of 8,600 were going out this week. And then the remaining ones will go out at the end of the month or beginning of September. So things are progressing along and moving in the right direction for getting this thing done right on time.
That's great news. At what point will we plan to have any type of either webinars or educational sessions for the public so that they can understand the reval statement that they're going to receive, or are we planning to do that?
I'm not 100% sure. That's the first time I've had that question. I mean, I guess we could entertain that, but I don't know if that's something that's been done in the past. We've never done anything like that in any of the towns that I've worked in previously.
Well, I will tell you that in the negotiations with the companies that we're working with, educational sessions and update, I don't know if it's neighborhood by neighborhood or whether it's 3 or 4 centralized areas, but that definitely is part of the program. Informing the public of what we're doing and how we're doing it. We not only knock on doors and get data, but then there's a whole valuation methodology which utilizes comparable properties and other methods that are used, is explained to the public. We feel, based on the experience we had 5 years ago, we had to do better at informing the public. So I know it's part of the program. I don't know what the timing is, but I meet regularly with John Galante, who is our consultant on the commercial side, Paul Freya, who's working with us on the residential and the whole assessor's office. And that will be an issue that we raise at the next meeting to talk about the timetable, how many sessions, where they're going to be held, and how long, who's giving the sessions, and what the agenda will be.
If Ms. Dacus, if we can get that information when it's available, so we can start circulating it at the appropriate time, so the public is aware, I think that would be a positive step forward.
Absolutely.
Paul, anything else to share in terms of the reval at this point?
No, that was pretty much it. That like I said, that the visits are all done. The project manager, I mean, I could add that the project manager is diligently working on studying all the sales as they come in and formulating his tables for creating the valuation formula. And we should, I mean, we obviously we can't start actually valuing until October 1st passes and the study period technically closes, because the sales still count all the way up right through September 30th.
Any comments or questions for the tax assessor? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Thank you, Paul, for that update. And again, we'll look for Mr. Dacquis to provide information on the educational sessions or whatever the communication plan will be as it relates to interacting with the public to get information to them.
Absolutely.
Great. Moving on to item 9 in the agenda, which is receive the Oak Hills Authority monthly financial statement for June 2023. And we have Alan Dutton from the Oak Hills. He's vice chair of Oak Hills Park Authority. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the privilege of being here tonight. Just a quick announcement. Jennifer McAllister, who was treasurer of the authority, is stepping down, has stepped down. Denise Brown will be taking over from Jennifer, and I hopefully anticipate her being at the next meeting with me so that we can have the treasurer also report to you rather than seeing my face all the time. So just from an officer perspective, Joe Andrasco is staying on as chair for the upcoming year. I will stay as the vice chair, and Denise Brown will be the treasurer of the authority. Just so we know that. We closed the books on fiscal 2023 in June of this year. And just a brief overview of the year, if I may. Obviously, when we look at Oak Hills, we look at our revenue, we look at our expenses, we look at our operating income for the year. We have the actual numbers, we have the budgeted numbers, and we have the last year's numbers. The three areas I like to look at. From our operating income, we deduct our debt we pay the city, we deduct our commercial debt, and then we deduct our capital at the end of what we spend for the capital, giving us a number at the end of the year, either a negative or a positive number. So just a brief overview. 2023, revenue-wise, we made $2,375,000 compared to our budget of $2,001,000. And the budget was pretty much the same as what we did last year, $2,001,000. So we were about $265,000 ahead of our budgeted revenue and also compared to last year. And all that area was mainly in the golf rounds. Really good year for us from golf rounds, almost 39 to 40,000 rounds. On the expense side, we spent $1,674,000, which actually was the same as what we spent the year before, almost exactly. We had budgeted to do $1,768,000, another 100,000 more, but we didn't use that money. One of the main reasons was we did not have a general manager position this last fiscal year. We did not have that position. We do have that position now budgeted and filled moving forward. So from an operational income point of view, we ended up making about $700,000 this fiscal year compared to a budget of $341,000 and a last year's figure of $515,000. So we were basically $359,000 ahead of our budget in income and $185,000 ahead of last year, which is, very nice. So we then looked to our debt to the city, what we pay, the $2 per round and a percentage of the revenue. I think we paid $119,000 to the city compared to $110,000 the year before. Our commercial debt was very similar. The money we pay for our leases, for our equipment, and for our golf carts, $155,000. Pretty much the same this year compared to last year as well. On the capital side, I believe we spent about $133,000 in our capital budget, compared to a budget of 170. The year before, we had spent $295,000 in our capital, which was the year we did the cart paths, because we had a very good cash flow from the year before, from the COVID year when a lot of people were out to play golf. So, you know, this year our cash position improved by about $295,000. You know, by the time you take these numbers away from our operating income, last year you take the capital and city debt and commercial debt away from our operating numbers, we were actually about $44,000 in the hole. So that's a brief overview of the financials of what we did last year.
Thank you. Any questions for Oak Hills? Yes, Councilmember Brian Mead.
Thank you. That's a great year you had. I did notice that about a little north of 700,000 in positive cash flow, netting in depreciation. I have two questions. The water bill, that's line item 5620. It appears to have doubled, and more recently was triple the prior June. If you could comment on that, and then without going into details, just highlight the capital plan for next year. Thank you.
Okay, the water bill for the fiscal year that we've just finished was, we had if you remember, Councilman, we had a very, very dry summer, and we had to buy extra water. Normally we would take our water, you know, for irrigation from the water we had, but we had to use city water and pump it in. It was like a really high amount, $35,000 more, and that was the main reason for that. Now, you're talking about the capital bill for this coming year, the budget for this year, or what we actually spent in 2023?
Yeah, coming up. Like, can you just highlight for us?
Yep.
Highlight for us a few things you might be doing this year.
You know, we're basically we're going to be spending money on cart paths, continuing the cart paths. We're spending about $85,000 on our cart paths because we need to continue that program, especially between, you know, the first and second tee, and also you know, two or three other holes. We haven't spent any money in our storage bays, our areas where Jim Shell works, and there's a $50,000 number in there for that area. We're also possibly looking to do the exploratory work for the sand traps and the bunkers in those areas. We do need to spend a little money on the clubhouse, some of the awnings and things like that. We also are probably having to look at some of the air conditioning units that are coming towards the end of their $18,000 each. It's a possibility we have to you know, repair about 3 of those as well. So, you know, we're looking to put the money back into the area, into the club, so that we can, you know, keep up. The course is in pretty good shape. You know, Jim Shell does a really good job. Those are probably most of the items there. Okay.
Thank you. And last question. And again, you guys had a fantastic year. I hope that keeps up and we can keep pouring more money into this thing. On the back to the water bill, I know we reconstitute water from the collection area between holes 5 and 6.
Yep.
What? I know we can't let it drain too low. Can you give me the specifics on that? If you don't have them tonight, that's fine. But I know that at a certain point, we can't let it drain too low, and then we got to buy water. So yep. What are those thresholds?
You know, I don't know. What I'll do, Councilman Weeks, I'll get a hold of Jim Shell and I'll have him contact you and give you the information. I don't have that at my fingertips, to be honest with you. So I'll have Jim Shell give you that information.
Okay, thanks. I mean, we don't want to kill the goldfish in there, but or make it a dry swap, but
Right.
that would be helpful to know.
Okay, and just one final note, if I may. We did meet with Karen Vitale from the city to discuss, because we have this a certain amount of money that we need to look to be investing. We did determine that we cannot join our money with the city of Norwalk because we're somewhat of a separate entity, so we need to be managing it separately ourselves from an investment point of view. So that was one thing that came up that Karen told us, and we are basically doing our projected cash flow based upon our capital budgets and our cash needs. Obviously, during the winter, we don't have any revenue coming in, so we need money then. So at the next meeting, I will be able to tell you exactly what we're going to be doing with our money, where we're going to be putting it, and what type of interest we're going to be getting on it, on this excess cash that we have.
Well, that sounds great. Limited to money markets. I know, and Mr. Dashowitz can chime in here. I know it's very conservative, but you really ought to have 6 months of operating cash liquid. Do you march to that tenet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert in this area. I look to the treasurer, and Gary Leeds, one of our authority members, who's an ex-CFO of a major corporation, is on our board as well. And, we've been guided with them and also working with the city. Everything's going to be FDIC, guaranteed. So it's up to 250. So,
I would say, Brian, until a year ago, they didn't have sufficient cash balances that we worried about.
This is a great problem to have.
Yeah, it's called golden problems. So the point was they were dipping into their line of credit. And so managing cash wasn't the issue. The issue here was uninsured deposits. FDIC only goes up to $250,000. I was concerned, I don't want anybody related to the city to have any losses on cash balances, deposits that are ours. So we instituted a tri-party agreement with Webster Bank, and I just offered to Oak Hills the opportunity to coordinate. Alan, you're absolutely right. We don't want to commingle accounts. We want you to get the benefit of whatever we negotiate, but you have your own separate accounts that you manage. And as long as it's under 250,000, it's not even an issue. If it goes over that, you may have to split it into 2 different banks, okay, to make sure that you're insured. Brian, you're absolutely right. There are restrictions on what you're allowed to invest in. We're very conservative. That's the charter. And at the same time, you need the liquidity. So if you can get a money market and get a pretty good rate from a bank that's not going to go out of business, you've done your homework. So we're happy to coordinate with you. I'm sure Karen gave you 95% of what you need to know.
Yeah.
And if you have any other questions or issues, just give us a call.
Nice problem to have. Without a doubt. Thank you.
They should be bigger and larger as the years go by.
Alan, thanks again. And thank you, Henry.
Okay. Thank you.
Question, Alan, how is the activities in the restaurant progressing?
Okay. I mean, the restaurant is open. We actually was just serving a little breakfast on Saturdays and Sundays. We set up a little place down there with a guy making breakfast sandwiches. We sold like 10, 15. The restaurant is open. Could it be busy? Yes, I think it could, but it's being open. I think, the halfway house is a good area. They do about, nice revenue there. The drinks card is going, and, the restaurant is open. The bar is open, so it's available, and, seeing a, little uptick there, I mean, is it going gangbusters? No, but it's there and it's available to people to use. It's going okay.
Alan, do they pay us a fixed fee, or is it a percentage based on?
No, it's a lease for they're paying us. They pay us a fixed fee on a monthly basis. Plus, also they're making up some of the back issues that we've had with them of payments. But they are fully up to date on all their payments on utilities and lease.
Excellent. Do they share with us financial statements so that we know how their business is doing?
They have to do that. I'm not sure if it's 3 months and 6 months. Don, actually, Dry Dock did share with me their P&Ls for a 2 or 3 month period. on a monthly basis, which I found quite interesting. And I actually wanted to try and meet with him to, I'm not going to say help him, but just to give him some tips and stuff. But
No, the concern I have is that if we just get fixed payments and we see in their financials that they're not covering that, that's an issue that we want to jump on.
Yeah.
I hope they do well and are very successful and that our payments are a small portion of their whole operation, but it's something we need to monitor just to make sure we don't run into the problems that we've had in the past.
Right. I think the timing, obviously, when you look at May, June, July, and August, September, it's not so much of an issue because you have the cash flow. I think it's those other times that we need to be more diligent. I agree.
Right. But okay, so we watch every 3 months or whenever we get those financials.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nora Najelski-Eichner.
Thank you. Just quickly, Alan, on an entirely different topic.
Mhm.
How is the move away from pesticides going? Have you all been able to make any progress on that? How are you feeling
No
about
problem.
that?
We are fully compliant. We were fully compliant from the beginning. It has cost us a little more money. If you look at our P&Ls, it's probably about, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's 5 or 8%. But when the edict came out, obviously my green superintendent was grumbling and moaning and stuff like that, but as one would, of course. But we are now fully compliant with our pesticides, and it is costing a little more money, but we're okay. No issue.
Awesome. That's terrific to hear. I mean, I know that part of why, what we had wanted to do with the ordinance was to really set a model and help homeowners see that it's doable, that, you all have been successfully doing it. Really good.
Oh,
so fabulous. Thank you.
We're on board.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Oak Hills? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Thank you, Alan, for the update, and we'll look forward to getting a end of summer report next month.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Great. Moving on in the agenda to item number 10, which reads as follows. Authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Telrepco in an amount not to exceed $53,401 for purchase mobile devices, printers, and miscellaneous equipment for police patrol cars. Telrepco is on a state of Connecticut DAS NASPO Panasonic contract number as noted and account as noted. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Ed Camacho, thank you. And we have with us this evening Joyce Liu, our IT director, to present the item.
Good evening, everyone. IT initiated a police fleet hardware refresh program with our PD department back in 2010. And the goal is to replace mobile device on schedule to prevent device failure and ensure our officers have a functioning tools in their vehicle out in the field 24/7. So every year, PD would request fleet car refreshment in their capital budget, and depends on the numbers of replacement cars needed, IT matching the cost of the hardware to install in the patrol cars. So both request item can be found in the current approved capital budget under police and IT departments. So the device we put in the patrol cars are rugged and designed for inhospitable environments. So harsh, right? So they tend to be more expensive than the traditional laptops and meant for the office or home use. We typically initiate the purchase process well in advance. As hardware delivery usually take a couple of months due to the high demand for this item. And once the equipment arrives, our public safety IT team start preparing for the software installation, and then the installation and test equipment before releasing the car for the patrol officers. We do reuse all the hardware and parts that in decent conditions. Yeah, so I'm here to answer any questions you might have about this agenda item.
I think you just answered my one outstanding question which is, do we recycle any of the equipment in some way or form once we replace it with new equipment? And I think your answer was those items that are usable, we try to find a place for them.
Yes, we reuse the parts and we reuse whatever we can do, whatever they are in working condition, then we will recycle them to another car.
This amount of funding, how many patrol cars will we be able to outfit with this amount, this 53,000?
Actually, PD asking for 10 cars, but this year we did while our IT team did an evaluation on all the equipment. We think we can just get by 9 equipment for 10 cars. So we can reuse some of the the devices into the to reuse this.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Joyce? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this item, show by raise of hand or verbal aye.
Aye.
All those opposed have the same right. We have one opposed, Councilmember Brian Meek. So this item is approved and we'll move on to the full council for review and approval at the next council meeting, which will be Tuesday, September 12th. So that's when we'll bring it forward for approval.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. Okay, before we close, our Chief Financial Officer, Henry Dakowitz, anything that you wish to share with us before we close the agenda?
Well, you'd never ask. Yes, we had a wonderful week. We priced our latest bond issue on Tuesday. Just for the context, in the 2 weeks prior, interest rates went up by 25 basis points, a full 0.25%. Last Friday, we got a little bit of a bounce back. And then Tuesday morning, Moody's lowered the credit rating on about 10 or 12 banks around the country. So there was a flight to quality. And the fact that we have 3 AAA ratings helped us a great deal, not just from Connecticut investors, but across the board. We were looking to raise $70 million, and we had purchase bids for $300 million from 52 different institutions. The investment bankers said they haven't seen a performance like that in a very long time. So I'm pleased to announce we issued 30-year bonds. Actually, the principal amount will be $65 million with the premium because our interest rate coupons were a little bit higher than the market. It will be a total of $70 million in proceeds. And our interest rate over the 30 years, it's known as TIC, true interest cost, was 3.74%. Exceptionally good in this market. Let me give you a context. Last summer with 90 million, we paid 3.59. So we only went up 15 basis points, 15 percentages of 1%. And the Fed has increased rates during this period for over 1, maybe 1.5%. So very pleased. Everything came together. The market, the investment bankers did a phenomenal job. I'm looking at the history. We borrow for new money bonds once a summer. So over the last 5 summers, the first one being when I was here 3 months, we've raised almost $300 million. But the interest rates have gone all over. When I first came here in 2019, it was 2.59. The next summer, we got 1.67 and then 2%. We'll never see those rates again for a long time. Last summer, 3.59 and now 3.74. So we've added a lot of debt and it's been at a higher rate incrementally as we're going. Now, our financial advisor Bill Lindsay at Munistat Services revised upward his estimate of the bound for how much debt we can handle without risking the AAA debt limit, the AAA bond rating. And originally, we both thought it was 400 million. Moody's changed their methodology. He said 500 million. After this issuance, our total debt is 450. So by next year, we're going to be out of room. I expect we've been raising 40 to 75 million a year, and that's for 4 years now. Actually, 1 year we went up to 90. So I think we're going to be out of bond capacity next year. And at the same time, a very key ratio is the ratio of our debt service. Debt service is what we would call the principal and interest payments we have to make on all of our outstanding debt, and that's part of our operating budget. And the rating agencies look at the percentage the debt service is of the year's operating budget. So last year, our debt service, the last year ending June 30, 2023 was 35 million. This year's budget for 2024 is 40 million. And on a budget of 425 million, we're now at 9.4%. Next year, with these new bonds, we'll be at 45 million. And if the 425 million operating budget goes up to 450, we're going to be at 10%. So both for the absolute debt amount and for the debt service, we're going to be right at the edge next year. So we'll see what the reval does and with the values of the grand list, but realistically, we are running out of room, and yet we still have 175 million of capital projects approved that have not been bonded for, which is like an albatross over my head. So we did good this year. We sneaked in, we got our AAAs, and we got a very good rate, but it's only going to get tighter. And so, Greg, as you have indicated in the past, we might have to sit down and look at all of our approved capital projects, slim them down, maybe do smaller pieces of those projects, stretch them out over time so that we can fit them all in and maybe even possibly cancel some. But the financial limits, we're running out of room.
Thank you for the update, Henry. Councilmember Brian Meek and then Councilmember Nora Nadelski-Eichner.
Thank you, Henry. That's pretty sobering. I mean, the credit card's just about maxed out, but fantastic news on the 3 3/4%. How did that do in the secondary market? You said you had 300 orders and we filled the whole lot on 52.
What happens is it's not a secondary market, it's a primary offering. It's the first time these bonds are offered. The investment banks go out to their clients and they initiate bids. And they say, this is what I'm willing to bid for at what price. Some of them ask us to increase the rate. We say no, but we had orders for 300 million of bonds and we were only selling 70 million. We were 4.5 times overbought, if you would. And it varies based on the maturity. There was only one maturity where we didn't get 100% bids. So it was very strong. It just shows where the market was and that we were a very attractive credit to many, many different institutions.
What was the term that didn't max out the demand?
I think it was 9 years. It was.
Okay.
It's one of those strange things that the market had.
Yeah, that's weird.
And you know what? Last year we had the same thing, and the investment banker took the bond and they eat it, and they said they'll market it in the next couple of days. So that's one of the reasons we selected them. They stand up, and if they feel our price is right, they'll stick with it and put their money where their mouth is.
Thank you, Henry. I mean, I'm hearing a crisis from you, but I'll sleep well tonight with 3 3/4. That's great.
3 3/4 is good. The point is, I've been saying this for several years. It's coming. I don't see the changes. I don't see where all the additional revenue will come from, except from taxes. Okay. I don't see any $500 million malls being built. Okay. So whatever development we have, it's incremental when you're looking at a $4 billion grand list. So where's that revenue coming for all the money we're spending? So the bottom line is that, you know, our debt service is part of our operating expenses, and that has to be funded either by fees, by intergovernmental grants from the state primarily, or the federal government, or by local taxes. And I just see pressure in that area going forward.
Overstate some more property tax bills for cars. One can hope.
Councilmember Nora Nadelski Eichner.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. So Henry, I wanted to add my congratulations to Brian. That is a terrific rate in this market. And I appreciate, I know it took a lot of hard work to get there, but that really will pay dividends for 30 years. So I'm very grateful to see a rate that low. So thank you.
You're muted again. You're still
Sorry, my other question actually was for you, Chair Burnett. To Henry's point, I wonder, would it be possible for us to have a meeting, you know, before the budget, so in September or October, to sit and look at the current capital list and see? I mean, you know, I'm deferring to you. I don't know, but is that something we could do?
Oh, absolutely. We not only something that we could do, is something we will do. We will take our chief financial officer's the information and his advice. As he mentioned, you know, we're not saying we have a crisis, but we have a situation, and it's a situation we need to look at carefully. And it starts at looking at the capital projects that we currently have on the books, as well as any capital projects down the line. And we have to make some really tough decisions to ensure that we maintain a positive posture. So that is something we will do, not can do, but we will do in the coming months.
Great, thank you. Because I really am very interested to see, you know, what's on the list that we haven't gotten to yet and have priorities shifted over time. It would really be very helpful to have a better sense of the granular than just the big number. So thank you, Chair. I really appreciate that.
Councilmember Ed Camacho.
Just a very quick question. I believe you said that the debt service payments are or will be at $40 million out of our budget. Is that what you said?
Last year, ending June 30 of 23, it was 35 million. The budget that we just set for 24, the current year, is 40 million. With this 70 million, I am predicting it will go up to 45 million subsequently.
And of the 35 million that we paid this year and 40, let's say, that we're going to pay next year and so forth, how much of that is principal and how much of that is interest? Or how much of that is reducing the total debt amount?
Appreciate the question. The last time I looked, I would say 1 to 3 years ago, we had about 20 million a year that was maturing. Okay, so if we issued 90 million of debt and we retired 20 million, our total debt goes up by 70. Subsequently, it's been below that. We're getting to 18 million a year, 16 million a year, etc. So the absolute amount of debt is going up, and we're replacing lower interest debt with higher interest debt. Combine those two factors, that's why the debt service going from 35 to 40 million was an increase of 14%. So it's basically squeezing out other expenses in our operating budget. Now, we are fortunate in one aspect. Our pension plan is 75% funded, and our OPEB is 97% funded. If you look at most major cities, they don't have that. And you can also look at the state of Connecticut, California, Illinois, they have much lower funding. So what happens is they have to contribute greater and greater amounts into those funds in order to satisfy all the obligations as people retire. So we don't have that, and it's viewed very favorably. But the debt service, which we can control, not as much debt and trying to get lower interest rates, we can manage. It's manageable. If you're sitting in Hartford looking at the state where they're only about 50% funded for their pensions, and when you have a bang out year and the governor says we're going to put an extra $1.5 billion into the pensions, and it still doesn't move the needle very far. The obligation is that big. So I view my role as early warning detector system. I've seen it. I see it coming. If things change, like we can issue up to 500 million, great. But I'm trying to be a realist of saying, I see problems ahead and I don't see the remedies unless action is taken. So I wholeheartedly support a review of the existing approved capital projects that have not yet been funded, with an eye to examining that, as I'll say again, if it had 10 components and maybe we only fund 5 or 6 right now. If it was a Cadillac, maybe we make it a Volkswagen. If we can defer it and push it out further, then that will allow us to use some of that future debt capacity that frees up as the debt matures. Otherwise, we're going to run out of room. So I heartily endorse Mr. Burnett's approach, and I can't wait to sit down. I'll give you all the reports and we'll have a discussion. My role is advisor. I can give you the facts. I can give you an expert's financial opinion, but you good people have been elected to set policy and you make the decisions of what you want to do.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Councilmember Diana Revelous.
I just want to say, Mr. Dackwitz, I remember our conversation on this exact moment. So
Yep.
We're here. That's it. I was just gonna give my motion after and do my job. That's all. I'm like,
Okay, well, keep your mic open, because if there's no other further comments or questions, Diana,
motion to adjourn.
all those in favor?
Great.
Okay, it's approved.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the summer.
Have a great rest of the summer and a great evening. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Take care.